We are going to see the 2027 general elections. Some of the people you are seeing campaigning here will not see the parrot. They are not going to be the parrot because they will be disqualified because of inciting Kenyans. Let that be very clear as a message, and I'm saying it without fear or contradiction. We have agreed with my colleagues here, the chair, we must disqualify at least 15 or 20 people.
For politicians engaged in making those reckless utterances, be it in the public rallies, be it in the digital platforms, their time is up, and it is not going to be business as usual. And they will face the full force, the full consequences of the law.
IBC cannot hold elections in an environment where that is full of incitement, division, violence, chaos, anarchy. We must refrain from celebrating those individuals who are thriving in hate and dividing us.
Some have a problem with IBC saying that we can postpone an election. It is not, that is not the, and especially when they cite security reasons. Remember, under the Kenyan Constitution 2010, war can only be declared to be war. You can only say there is war in a country when Parliament has approved that to be so. And that's the only reason you can postpone an election. Now, even in Olkalau, and some, let me put it in a better way, 1 week to that election, the IBC chair said he can postpone that election. It's not within his mandate. And we called him out. And we told him that cannot happen. And for the avoidance of doubt, the violence that was seen in Olkalau was state-sponsored. There were people armed with rifles that are only found within government agencies. National Police Service, Directorate of Criminal Investigation. Those were the only people that were, actually the gadgets they were using are police gadgets. Number two, I don't know whether I should congratulate the police. The police came out, the DIG and a number of people, and said that they are ready to provide and they have security enough for the elections to go on. The IBC, if they see any deficiency, they should just talk to the independent agencies. That's why we have the Independent National Police Service to provide security. That is their job. And there has never been postponement of any election apart from two. One in Kacheliba and one in Rongai, because there was an error in the ballot paper printing. There is nowhere in Kenya you've ever stopped an election in a certain area. Zero. It has not happened. In 2017,
yeah,
there was a repeat election.
Yes.
And in some parts of this country,
it didn't happen.
There are people who felt they do not want an election. Actually, Raila boycotted that election. It is not that the election did not happen. And by the way, you cannot, when people said in, for instance, Homa Bay, I will give an example, Migori, that we will not vote because Raila has said, IBC had the responsibility to go on. It is only that there it was not held. Everywhere else in Kenya, the election was held. But postponing an election, it is not a matter. And by the way, for your information,
it's not a politician who decides.
For your information, under the Election Act, there are conditions. Because it is conducting an election is a constitutional mandate. Allow me also to say, the IBC does not need to come on media. They just need to act. If they have a person, a suspect who has an issue with they have a problem with because of the Election Act, they should just call that person out. They called Wanjiko Moher, they called Gikaria. That is what they should do. But the issue of, I have a big issue with them postponing an election. And let it be that they do not want to say this to postpone the 2027 election, because on 10th of August, Ethon, together with his team, as the chair of IBC, they must conduct the election. Allow me also to say, if they feel they are not able to conduct an election themselves, they should just resign. Let them not bring that issue to Kenyans. They are given a mandate by Kenyans and also the Constitution. And Kenyans expect nothing less than an election on August 10th, 2027. Whether this regime wants an election or not, the election must happen.
Okay.
The process of arrest of any person who is suspected to have committed an offense in this country is guided by the Constitution. under Articles 49 and 50 of our Constitution. And one of the fundamental requirements is, before someone is even arrested, there is always a requirement that they must be summoned. Now, failure to honor the summons, that's when the police officers or the law enforcement agencies are supposed to move in and arrest that person. But at the point of arresting person, that accused person, that suspected person is supposed to be informed in a very unequivocal manner the reasons for his arrest and his rights at the time of his arrest, which rights includes the right to remain silent and the right to have a counsel at the time of his arrest. Of course, the jurisprudence that has come from courts is that in the event those rights are violated, much as it may not lead to a fundamentally setting aside of a procedure that arises from that, such an aggrieved party has got recourse in court and can sue the state for compensation and reparations. So if at all Honorable Kagusha was not informed as to why he's being arrested, very formally and in very express terms, that is a violation of his rights under the Constitution. And an opportune time, if he so desires to pursue, he can actually seek redress. And most importantly, he is supposed to have been presented in court even yesterday, because if he was arrested yesterday and processed and the charge sheet was ready, there was no need to wait until today, because remember, the law is that within 24 hours. So if you arrest someone in the morning, and we saw he was arrested in the morning, I'm sure they will have processed the charge sheets by around midday. The charge sheet ought to have been ready, and he ought to have been presented yesterday. But
you're assuming the charges were ready by the time of arrest?
Looking at the expeditious manner in which he was being arrested, I believe they had already formulated the reason why they wanted to arrest him. And remember, the courts have also said that by the time the police or the law enforcement agencies proceed to arrest someone, they ought to have done their investigations and concluded, such that they just arrest that person and present them to court. An arrest is not supposed to trigger an investigation. That is what the courts have said. So I suppose and I believe that by the time they were coming to arrest him, they knew exactly the offense that he had committed, and the charge sheet must have been prepared and ready for him to be arrested. You do not arrest, then you start the investigation.
There's that word that the arrest should not be dramatic, and there are people who are saying, of course, if you saw the pictures, it was such a huge group of police officers.
Right.
How should one be arrested?
As I said, enforcement of any suspected person to have committed an offense, it starts with a summon. Unless it's a cognizable offense. Now, this is not a cognizable offense. And a cognizable offense is an offense which is committed in the presence of a police officer. That's when you can arrest immediately. But this is not a cognizable offense. It is an offense suspected to have been committed. So by the time they were coming to arrest him, they must have done some investigation. But most importantly, an arrest does not suspend someone's right under the Constitution. An arrest should not be indignified. Yep. It's supposed to be within the confines of the law. So by the time the police were coming to arrest Kagusha, they ought to have followed the law. Police officers are not supposed to don in masks and balaclavas. They are not supposed to barricade roads when they want to arrest one person. The courts have spoken very clearly that police officers are not supposed to, cover their faces. They are supposed to be identified. They're supposed to, to wear identification marks. They're supposed to be in police uniform. And even those ones that are in civilians, they're supposed to be properly identified in the channels that are required. The courts have been very clear that no police officer should be moving around in masks. Barricading of roads by police officers in an attempt or in an effort to arrest someone should not be the thing. In any case, this is just one individual.
Okay.
It cannot be a threat. So that is what the law provides.
The post-election violence of 2007, it started like a joke. It started like how we are doing things right now. And I think as Kenya, we have come a long way. We have reached a situation where we shouldn't go back. The lessons we learned then, the experiences we learned then, should be what should guide us to be one Kenya. elections is just a process where we are going to elect one person and leave the other, whoever is most popular, and it should not take us to situations where we are running or balkanizing the country and starting to create kind of war, kind of donations. Now, coming to the arrest yesterday, we have heard Mushmwagagusha saying that he did not have summons, or he should have had summons. When you commit an offense, the first thing is that the police will look for you and tell you, come and record a statement at the police station. If you don't go, if you don't honor, that is when they come looking for you. And we've seen from the images when he was going into the Subaru, he was not with hooded men. It was a police officer who went with him. And I think he mentioned that the officers should be in uniform. DCI don't have uniform usually. They're normally in civilian, but they identify themselves. And as you've rightfully said here, or corrected the situation here, that the DCI who worked with him actually identified himself. Now, looking at the issues or the arrest and the comments that have been made by officers that have spoken about the elections next year, I want to correct my colleague here to say that IEBC can actually stop an election of a particular area. And the law allows them to do that when the situation or the scenario in that particular area does not warrant or does not give space for that election to happen. It has happened before. I think when we did the re-election or the repeat election of the presidential elections in 2017, there are areas in Nyanza that did not vote because IEBC at that time felt that the security situation in those particular polling stations could not warrant an election to be carried out. So it is possible because the law allows them.
Can that particular area include the entire country?
It did not include the entire country.
No,
and
I'm asking.
No, it was not the entire country.
No, I'm asking.
Yeah.
Because you said that IBC can stop an election in a particular area.
Yes.
Can that be an entire country?
No, it cannot be an entire country because they have to look at situations in each and every polling station. Remember, they conduct elections in polling stations, not in the country, in a polling station. So they have to look at the situation of that particular polling station and polling area, whether it is possible for an election to be carried out. And if it's not possible, they will suspend elections and they will call that election at a later time when the situation calms down for that particular area. So when IEBC says that we are not going to have elections in areas that are polarized, it is us as politicians, and not only politicians, Kenyans. We are all guilty as charged. If we go to the social media today, the kind of abuses, the kind of talk that is there, it's all, we are actually raising serious political temperatures, and it is across, whether politicians or non-politicians. So we need to all calm down as a country. It's just an election that we are going into.
Okay.
First, as a Kenyan, I'm a bit worried that we are replaying the events of pre-2007. And as a nation, I want to believe we all learned our lessons. So all the political players need to be very careful how they speak. Words are very powerful. They can incite a nation, and therefore we must all weigh our words. Leadership comes with the responsibility, and I want to implore upon our leaders, especially those in the political space. Chapter 6 of our Constitution speaks about leadership and integrity, and I think there are values that we need to uphold. But having said that, I think it's important that we always remain within the guardrails of our governing instruments, that is the law, and therefore if arrests have to be done, let them be done in the right manner. I'm not a lawyer, but I would imagine that they must comply with the law. But even equally, in terms of the various institutions that support our electoral system, like the IEBC, they need to carry the trust and confidence of the people. And much as I agree with the chair of the IEBC, to the extent that he needs to warn against violence, because violence cannot provide us with an enabling environment for free and fair elections, and therefore politicians need to know that they must promote that environment. It's also important that the weight of a nation is firmly in the hands of the referee, and therefore the referee, as much as he is right, must also equally be very guarded in the words that they speak, so that they don't get misinterpreted.
Yeah.
But I also want to speak to the various agencies that met within that forum. They have the powers to do what they're supposed to do. If you are the DCI, you have the powers to arrest these politicians if they break the law. If you are the NCIC, the law empowers you to enforce the act, and it's very explicit. Why we have to wait for things to get out of hand, I think it's not right.
Okay.
And I call upon all these agencies, please do your work, because from where I sit as a business leader, I invite, I support clients, I advise investors. How do they start looking at our country? Politicians may not know, but somebody is making an investment decision and is looking at the political environment and saying, is this where I want to put my money? Then tomorrow they will come here and say the economy is not growing. So we all have a responsibility to be mindful of the language we use. And I would want to urge all politicians, regardless of whether you are pro-government or anti, please weigh your words, because first and foremost, you are a Kenyan, and we all carry the aspirations of this nation, and the young people we are bearing, the children we have today, are looking upon us to as role models.
Okay.
So let's always carry that wherever we go.
But what image does it bring when IBC shows up at a press conference with DCI, NCIC, Communications Authority of Kenya, the Political Parties Liaison Committee Chairperson, and others to issue warnings, and including what the Political Parties Liaison Committee's Chairperson Misati is saying, that some of these guys you're seeing and what they're saying, they will be blocked from running next year. Can they? Mheshimiwa Kitani.
Thank you very much. Independence of IEBC is just like independence of DCI and independence of many of the entities that were seated there, is not to say you work in a silo. When we go to an election, for example, as a candidate, I will be cleared not by IEBC alone. I will go to DCI, I will go to KRA, I will go to many entities to try and clear me, so that by the time I get to IEBC, I have all those clearances that other entities that is not IEBC will have cleared, and IEBC will rely on those documents to say, if DCI has cleared you, or if ESCC has cleared you, or if KRA has cleared you, then I now clear you on the political, on what it is that you need to do to be able to run for elections. So seeing them in a press conference is putting minds together in terms of how do we work together to make sure that these leaders who are going to come forth for a seat or two in during the general election coming, do actually abide by what is required in law, because you cannot work in a silo. We are one country, and all these entities, the independence is about their operations, not DCI will not come and tell them, please run elections like this. But they will require DCI, for example, to arrest somebody who has offended the law. They will require these other agencies that are there to do their bit of the law. So coming together and sitting together and saying, this is how we want to work collectively for this common good, for me, I don't see as if it is actually interfering with their independence. I think what is important here is guarding their independence insofar as how they are going to conduct the elections, where the mandate begins and where their mandate ends. That is their independence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Husband, are you persuaded?
Yes, I think to a large extent the IBC is right in terms of working with other agencies interdependently. That does not necessarily compromise its independence. However, I think there are certain times when they have to make certain pronouncements that they would speak as IBC on their own and give guidelines on what they would expect. But that said, they need all the other agencies to work together in order to deliver free and fair election. There's a role that NCIC plays. There's a role the National Police plays in terms of just ensuring there is security, but also ensuring that issues such as acts that undermine the rule of law in the country are dealt with. So it is okay from where I sit for them to occasionally meet with these agencies, but it shouldn't be a regular thing, because ultimately, when some of these agencies, especially those that are seen not to be doing what they should do, are seen in consistent with the IBC, then it can be misinterpreted that they are compromised. And that's why all agencies need to do their work professionally and fairly, so that then the perception that an arbiter is seen to be biased does not arise. You remember the cliche lawyers use, you must be beyond reproach, more like Caesar's wife. I think IEBC is in its place, needs to guard that space, and it doesn't mean it doesn't work together with the other agencies. But
you know, Hesbon, at a time that there is a perception, a growing perception that state agencies are working for the government in office, how does that sit?
I wouldn't say that state agencies are necessarily working for government in office.
That's what I said, it's a perception that is growing among the political space.
I think it's very difficult for IEBC to look at those agencies in those lenses, and that's why I say it's important that IEBC limits the interaction to what is necessary and on issues that they need to come together on. I want to believe why they met yesterday was specifically on the call towards addressing the growing tension and violence in the country. And I think it's also incumbent upon the agencies, now having met there, they shouldn't be meeting so regularly. But when necessary, like they did yesterday, I think I would give them the benefit of doubt. But the agencies also have to earn the trust of the Kenyan people. If there are incitement cases that are cited touching on those who are opposing the government, for example, let them be arrested and prosecuted. But equally, if there are people within the government space too that are speaking in a language that incites, they should also be arrested. And I think there's a time we had arrest of the Honorable MP for Migori. There was an arrest that more or less was cross-sectional. And I think it's the first time I saw politicians were all quiet. The suspect spent time in custody. There was no noise. So it appears that you only have a calm nation when you arrest on both ends at the same time. But I think the point is, arrest these ones, don't stop there. If there are others, go for them. Every leader has a responsibility to speak in a manner that unites the nation.
IEBC has got a bit of powers to postpone or delay elections in counties, wards, and constituencies. But it does not have powers to postpone or delay the general election in the country. So that position must be very clear. So IEBC cannot postpone next year's general election. Number two, I looked at the press statement by IEBC, and it smacks on their face in terms of their genuineness and independence, to the extent that IEBC understands very well that they have got what we call the Committee on Electoral Code of Conduct. There's a committee that enforces the elections code of conduct. And they also understand that their jurisdiction to punish for elections malpractices kicks in when they have gazetted an election period. So right now, if any offense or any utterances that have been made by any actor, be it a politician or be it any person that operates within that purview, it is the police and the ODPP that comes in to take care of that situation. They do not have any mandate. So for them to come out and say that we are going to, bar some people from participating in an election, that decision is null and void.
That was not said by IEBC. It is said by Misati. John Misati, who is the chairperson of the Political Parties Liaison Committee. And I do not know whether he has any...
And he said they have agreed. He pointed out and said, we have agreed with these ones. 15 people must not vie in the next election.
So,
but can he really?
No, he cannot. He cannot. He can do that. Because even if IEBC takes that decision, IEBC has got that Committee on Electoral Code of Conduct, is a quasi-judicial body, and its decision is still subject to a revision by the High Court. So its decision is not final in terms of trying to bar people from vying. But just to sum up the issue, IEBC also needs to instill, confidence among its Kenyans, such that political actors from both sides of the divide, it should not be seen to be skewed towards a certain, political divide. Today, they came out guns blazing, issuing statements because Honorable Kagusha seems to have ruffled, the law in the wrong way. But we have had instances whereby members of parliament or elected leaders affiliated to the government coming out to say that even if the government does not win the election, they are going to staff and ensure that the government wins. They ought also to have come out and issued statements condemning such kind of utterances. Yes. The CS of Health recently issued very inflammatory statements. If indeed IBC was genuine, it ought also to have called for a presser and said this CS needs to be reprimanded. So the genuineness and the timing of when they issue these statements speaks a lot to their impartiality. Mm-hmm. So they need to instill confidence by ensuring that they remain impartial and act according to the mandate of their office. So
really, I'm not sure you can bar someone just because they've been arrested or they're suspected of certain...
Yeah, and I think the High Court in 2013, during the general election, set the stage very clear. You remember the then presidential candidates, that is Honorable Uhuru and Honorable Ruto. They were facing serious charges at the ICC. Yeah. And the interpretation of the law by the High Court was that everyone is presumed to be innocent until proven otherwise. The Kenyan Constitution has got... an unqualified, presumption of innocence. So that sets the stage, and the bar is so high. And even if you attempt to bar someone, they still have recourse to court, all the way to the Supreme Court, because this touches on their right to vie in a political, a contest. So it becomes extremely difficult. What can really happen and what can curb some of these things is that the police and the office of the DPP needs to be vigilant, because that is the easiest way of trying to curb this menace of incitement. Okay. Because if someone commits an offense within the election period, they can still be charged within the normal, criminal justice system, and that is the best way. So we should not see IBC working in such a way as if it is trying to pull on one side. That perception is wrong for the country as we head towards 2027.
Direction kawuono nikama party leader nitie kabodiso nyawanga nitie kartuta kanye mulo ere jomo yegi tuta mo mi abad gi malo amiyo direction kaya ker maluo niraila wunya lego yando we wadot to kapone de kamachielo tabiro sie migi lweta makora chama tunkati la nono uwinjo wachno joluo nyaka lolai ni mamargi nitie tamanyo cholayo makata kochke kichwake gi yien okochiegi manegi to un ma unka oru wachno ganda luo minyaka walu bang dokto buru gi jawangaya kamaraila no wewa uwinjo wachno.
Now, husband, you understand that better than all of us here. What should happen to Ker Odungiranda?
I think it's a case of probably stretching his mandate too far, and also bordering on incitement. As a cultural leader of a community, he has a responsibility to talk to all forces. And I will give you a historical perspective. When Jaramogi Oginga Odinga resigned as Ker of Luo way back to join politics, he relinquished that position because he was getting into a political space that is partisan. And therefore, culturally, we expect our Ker to bless all. So he should speak for Orengo and his team. He should speak for everybody else. So, but I think also there is the feeling and perception generally that the community, to a very large extent, the way you see the politics, and you can feel the lenses that they are generally appear to be leaning towards the direction the Ker was saying, but he doesn't have to say as a cultural leader, that is not his space. I don't think...
So when he threatens people that if you're on a different direction, we'll curse you,
I think that is wrong.
Or I think we'll point at you the small finger and you will, sorry, I did.
Yeah, the small finger.
And you will disappear. How different is that from what Kagusha said?
I think that was wrong. I would not condone that as a leader who supports a good governance and ethical leadership. I don't think that is the right thing for the Kerr to say. He owes the nation an apology. That was not necessary from where I sit.
Yeah.
Much as sometimes people can get carried away with spaces, and Kagusha could say the same, but that is how you start polarizing a nation, because then if I do not support, for example, the two-term, and I'm in the territory where Kerr comes from, how safe am I with that kind of sentiment? The same way, if I'm living in a region where the Mheshimiwa Kagusha comes from, Mukurweini, and I support one term, two-term, how do I feel as a citizen in that part of the republic? I feel threatened. So I think that is how incitement builds up. And I did say earlier, Sam, that the pattern of incitement would start somewhere, then it starts spreading in every corner. And that is how you polarize a nation. And of course, once you feel pushed to the edge, the natural reaction of human beings is to start pushing back. Okay. And when they start pushing back, logic flies out through the window, and then the blame games begin. And you can hear it even in this panel. You can already feel that, why are you arresting this man? Not to defend not to say that he didn't commit a crime. If you ask Onesmus here, do you support the sentiments of the MP for Mukurweini? He will say no. He will rely more on the process of his arrest rather than the action that he did contribute, he did make.
Yeah.
Same thing if you would ask, who are these people who are inciting Kenyans? Those who are in one term will only point out to those who are pro-government. And pro-government will also just point to those who are, yet there is incitement on both ends. Yeah. We must, as a nation, speak against that kind of language, and I don't support the words that Kerr Odungeranda used. I think that is unfair, and that does not promote a society that we want. We are in a democratic society. You are free to choose who you support. Okay. Because if that were not the case, then you'll have a society that is living on the extreme edges, and that is not a society you'd want to be part of.